Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today we have a brand new set of great stories for you to enjoy. Subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Sit comfortably. Here we go. I got fired for going to work. A few years ago, I worked at a kiosk in a local shopping center, mall for Americans. Don't mean for that to sound snarky, some people just don't know. That applied a phone protector to phones. These protectors were absolute garbage for the price they were asking. If I recall, the iPhone X came out the Christmas before I started, and it was £150 to get it applied. So I wasn't all that keen about aggressively pushing the product. My supervisor, who was a friend of a friend, we'll call him Alex, was tasked to write up a work rota every Monday for the next week. This is important because I'd asked Alex if I could have 4 days off but make up for them later, as I was planning to go on holiday and propose to my fiancée, to which he spoke with everyone else to make sure they were okay working more days in a row if it meant they got more days off as I caught up on my hours. One important note is that Alex would have to send the rota to the owner of the company, we'll call him Randy, for verification and hour check, as legally we weren't allowed to work over a certain amount of hours. So Randy accepts the hours and the fact that I have days off, but make up for them right after I get back, which I did agree to, but it was absolute hell because I was working from 9 to 5, doing double shifts to make up the hours I'd lost in high temperatures, heat guns on full blast, a black hoodie, as it was part of the uniform, and nothing to eat or drink because it was against the rules to eat or drink at the kiosk. Looking back on it, I wasn't even allowed to have lunch during that week. Along comes the weekend, and all of my fiancé and I's close friends want to go out drinking to celebrate the engagement and consider the hellish work week I've had. I was down. It gets to about 3 a.m. and I've been drinking heavily since around 7 p.m. and I receive a phone call from Randy demanding that I work the next day, which means I would have worked more hours than I was legally allowed to, which wasn't even on the rota. I explained to Randy that I'm extremely drunk and in no fit state to be going into work. There'd been some time someone had been into work after smoking a bit of weed, but this was an entirely new realm. Randy then tells me he doesn't care how drunk I am, and if I keep drinking, he just wants me at the kiosk at 9 a.m. I continued drinking throughout the night because I wasn't in the right mindset to be making smart decisions, but I remember clearly that Randy wants me at the kiosk at 9 a.m. I get to the kiosk at 9, and Alex is already there with everything set up and can see that I'm clearly drunk and sits me down while he calls Randy, asking why I'm telling Alex that I'm meant to be there at 9 a.m., which I just kept muttering. Randy is furious that I turned up for work drunk and basically demands that I'm fired immediately, which Alex refuses to do because I technically hadn't done anything wrong. I ended up with a huge payoff because, as it turns out, you can't fire someone for following orders, provided you haven't broken the law. And our next story. You must leave the premises when he arrives. I was a prep cook for a local sports bar. I came in at 9 a.m., and whenever I was done with my prep for the day, I could leave, so I didn't really have an out time. They had a guy get in trouble for running his mouth, among many other reasons, so they took him off the line and stuck him on custodial duty. He also came in at 9 a.m. now, and sometimes it was just him and I in the back prep kitchen, which was kind of hidden from view of the line. I was harassed every day by this man, every GD day. He would say the nastiest crap to and about me. He would tickle me, even while I was using knives or the scary tabletop slicer, and would take my headphones out of my ears just to say nasty crap to me. I recorded him saying this gross stuff and had other line cooks report to management things they caught him doing and saying to me. I finally stopped trying to tell my manager and went above his head to his boss. HR came and took my statement and listened to all my recordings. Fast forward a week, my manager calls me to his office with his boss, basically told me I fabricated the whole thing. I had no proof the recordings were actually him, and out of everyone else they took a statement from, no one said they saw or heard anything happen. I asked my line cook friends if they were asked for a statement. Not a single kitchen person was asked about any of this. Turns out they only asked servers who'd never even worked in the morning when him and I were there. After this meeting, I was told I had to leave the premises whenever he arrived for work if my prep work was done or not. So guess who didn't work as fast on the day she was working prep alone? Instead of working quickly to get out by at least 5 p.m., always had a huge list of food to prep every morning because the place was busy, I started taking my sweet butt time on everything. Instead of multitasking, I only did one thing at a time. I made sure the plastic wrap was perfect on all the containers I filled and made sure to fill out the entire expiration sticker for each container instead of just signing and dating it like usual. Instead of starting out my day doing the time-consuming, more important items on the list, I left those for the last and started with simple things like making ranch, cutting celery, the piddly crap that really didn't matter if we were low on any given day. This place was known for their wings and chicken chunks, so every day I had about 50 pounds of chicken breast to cut into tiny, stupid chunks. I got maybe 10 pounds a day done now because, oops, I have to leave because Mr. Don't Know How to Effing Act is here for work, so I gotta go. Needless to say, when they ran out of the prepped popular items on the menu, we had to sit down and have a talk. Weird. Wonder why. Surprise! They're mad I haven't been finishing my prep list. I reminded them of the sexual harassment I reported and how poorly they handled it, and reminded them I was just following orders to leave the premises when Mr. DKHTFA arrived. Next day, when I arrived to work, I was called into the office to speak with HR. I was informed that Mr. DKHTFA had been fired, and I got some half-buttered apology. I said thanks, but I quit anyway. And our next story. $25,000 revenge on my slumlord. So a few years back, my family went through some pretty horrible stuff and ended up moving into a trailer park. It didn't look too awful as far as trailer parks go, and it was barely cheap enough to afford at the time, so we swallowed our doubts and moved in. The first night, we discovered there are bed bugs and roaches. Report the problem to the landlord the next morning. He says we must have brought them in. That was our first clue that living there was going to be a problem. Fast forward a couple years, and we've got roaches that are immune to every poison on Earth. No amount of cleaning can even get rid of the smell of the bugs. Yes, they smell. There's a water leak every couple of weeks, and the landlord just sends a guy out to cut down the existing water hoses and refasten them every time instead of replacing the rotting water lines. Our water heater is falling through the floor, rats and possums are coming up through the heat vents in the floor, the ceiling leaks, and there's a spot in the floor where you can stomp and knock power out to half the trailer. It was horrible. Every time we complained or asked for something to be fixed, anything, this fat a-hole would say it was our fault. He never treated for roaches. We did manage to kill off the bed bugs, but only after spending almost $1,000 and literally steam cleaning every inch of the place. Never fixed the gaping holes in the heating conduits under the trailer. Never fixed the leaks in the ceiling. Even being threatened by the health department didn't get this guy off his butt. So, we got another slow leak, this time behind the bathtub. It was a wet winter, so our yard was a swamp anyway. The landlord paid the water bill, and the meters were set up so it was impossible to tell which trailer had the leak, so we decided to just let it leak, all winter long. The first month, he was complaining in the office one day about how high his water bill was. By the second month, the leak had started spraying water at the back of our tub, so it was bigger. His water bill went up again. By December, it was obvious there was a big problem, and he called the water company out to investigate. We turned the water off while they were there so they couldn't pinpoint the leak if they pressure tested the lines, which they didn't do anyway, LOL, and as soon as they left, we turned it back on. By January, his water bills were so high that his partner came up thinking he must be embezzling funds from the utility account. They called the water company again and were told that the only way to fix the problem would be to seal the main water line that ran the entire length of the park. Basically, a crew comes out and blows a high-pressure stream of some chemical that hardens on contact with the walls of the pipe and seals them. And it's a long pipe, LOL. The repair estimate was $25,000 for a problem that didn't even exist. For 5 days, the crew was at the park, blowing this funk into the pipe and checking to see if they'd fixed the leak. We waited until the entire length of pipe had been coated, then fixed the leak ourselves. It cost us $14. And our last story. Boss gets me fired, so I also get her fired. A little over a year ago, I was working at a company and my manager and I didn't see eye to eye at all. I work in IT and have been working with EUC, End User Computing, for over 20 years. My manager was new to EUC and didn't like the fact that I would correct her, and most of the company came to me with questions and bypassed her. After about 6 months, I started to notice things were going downhill fast. I went to her boss and raised my concerns to no avail. Toward the end, I had to travel, and she wouldn't approve my expense report when I got back. We were not on speaking terms, so I emailed her several times. After a week and a half, I filed a complaint with HR and started looking for a new job. The day I met with HR, they went to her manager, and within an hour, my expense report was approved, and she made up an excuse saying the system was down, so that's why she didn't approve it. On a side note, when I met with HR, I told them that I felt she was retaliating against me, and I felt she was going to try to get me fired. About a week later, I get an IM from her manager asking me to come talk about an issue with a contract. The odd thing was, he asked me to meet him in an office by HR. I get there, and HR is in there. They ask me all kinds of questions, and after a while, tell me they have to suspend me due to lies my manager had told them. I was being nice and not bad-mouthing my manager up to this point. Then the gloves came off. I told them the truth about everything, which was easily verified if they interviewed my teammates. HR and the VP talked among themselves and decided both of us would be suspended pending investigations. When I handed in my phone and access card, I told the HR person, "This was why I came to you, as I knew she was going to try this." The next day, I get a call saying I was terminated, but she was also. I said I'd been interviewing and had a job lined up. I started 3 days later. 1.5 years later, my former manager, still unemployed. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.